Good evening, everyone. My name is Tamara Michael, and I am the current president of the California Association of Black Lawyers. I want to welcome you to our fourth Cable Connects event of this program year and our first in our two-part Back to School series. Cable Connects is our intentional community outreach initiative where we provide support, education, and boots on the ground for the community at large. We encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to keep up with what we have in store for the next few months. In the chat, I sent out the flyer for the next Cable Connects webinar from Diagnosis to Degree, Navigating Educational Resources, which will take place on September 11th. So, tonight's topic, Navigating Title IX, A Guide to Consent, Safety, and Your Rights, is a very important conversation. Our phenomenal expert attorney, Darryll Stallworth, will equip you with the knowledge to navigate Title IX. This session will cover a clear definition of consent, how to recognize and respond to sexual assault, and practical guidance on the legal landscape. Attorney Stallworth is a managing attorney at the Nieves Law Firm, where he provides compassionate and effective representation, empowering clients to overcome the challenges of the criminal justice system. A graduate of UC Berkeley and UC Davis School of Law, Attorney Stallworth has lectured internationally on effective case resolution and is the author of A Guide to Understanding the Criminal Justice System, Sex Crimes, which fortunately for all of you, he is so graciously providing an electronic copy to everyone registered tonight. Attorney Stallworth is a dedicated community leader and a mentor, and we are so grateful to have him to lend his expertise to us tonight. So without further ado, please welcome Attorney Darryll Stallworth.
Thank you, Tamara, for that wonderful introduction. Thank all of you for making the time to make yourselves available for this very important topic that we're going to discuss. Well, I'm going to just get right into it. The area of sexual crimes, sexual misconduct, sexual behavior is one of the most misunderstood areas in law and in Title IX. In the old traditional criminal law, you have the different misdemeanor, sexual assault, sexual battery, the stuff that many of you learned in law school. You can't touch somebody unless you have consent. You touch someone in the breast, the buttocks, or the vaginal area, or in the genital area with a man, that is sexual battery. That's a misdemeanor. What very few people know, because it's hardly ever prosecuted, is when you are an 18-year-old young man, which means you could be a senior in high school or freshman in college. And if you have consensual sex with a woman, a teenager that's 16 years old or younger, that's statutory rape. That's a misdemeanor. You can be prosecuted for that. If you are 19, 20 years old and you have sex with a 17-year-old woman who's consensual, for one in high school, you're a freshman or sophomore in college, that's also misdemeanor statutory rape. Most folks don't know that. It's rarely prosecuted, but I've had at least 3 cases over the years where that's taken place. When you go from the criminal cases of misdemeanors and you make your way towards the unfortunate felony criminal cases, we're talking about sexual assault, talking about penetration, intercourse, all of those things involving force or fear. That's what most people think about when they hear the word rape, which is actually rarely used. It's mostly sexual assault now. But there's a different type of sexual assault. There's a different type of rape that exists now that's very troubling. And now that we're getting ready to start a new school year for high school, college, even middle schoolers, there is a rape that involves having sex with someone that is incapacitated. That means that person is unable to communicate to the person that they're intimate with, whether or not they're giving consent. And that incapacitation could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be a mental impairment. And for our young men, it's very important they have to understand that in this new era, in this new place that we're in, that any type of intimate sexual behavior with someone that is intoxicated or incapacitated or mentally challenged will find you could find yourself being investigated and charged with a felony crime. I'm going to shift over to Title IX now because Title IX is sort of the hybrid. This is the area that very few people, fortunately, have ever had to come across. But Title IX is different than a criminal investigation because in Title IX, we're talking about any federally funded public institution, mostly schools, high schools, colleges, also covers any federally funded public institution, any government job, anybody that's working for the government, anybody who's working in any DA's office or public defender's office. If there's federal funds involved, you can be investigated for any type of sexual misconduct that disturbs a person's ability to have a healthy environment when they're in school, when they're at their job, when they're coaching, when they're playing sports. And the level and the burden of proof or the standard of review for a Title IX case is just more likely than not. In Title IX investigation, it's based on the Title IX department at your particular school. Sometimes they will have a third party law firm conduct the investigation and serve as a hearing officer. We won't have time to go through the whole navigating part of Title IX, but I'll just share with you that it does not allow you to have an attorney. You can have an advisor if you're being accused, if you're being investigated. Most of the time, the advisor cannot engage in the actual investigation. It's done by either a layperson who doesn't have a whole lot of legal experience or a law firm where they get someone that can hire an investigator. And it's a process that it doesn't provide, I believe, the proper safeguards for people that are being accused. Those are the two areas, the Title IX and the criminal charges that are really of a concern. But the main one that I've seen over the years and the one that is most troubling is the sexual assault or the rape involving someone that is at a party, at a fraternity or a high school party or a high school event. It could be a football game, basketball game. It could be in the restroom, the locker room, or on the field. And the person who makes the allegation or the complaint, whether it's a Title IX complaint or whether they're talking to the police department, oftentimes they both exist at the same time. It's like a hybrid investigation. There's somebody from the school investigating, and there's somebody from the law enforcement agency investigating, and there's the DA that's looking to decide whether or not they're going to charge the case, or there's a hearing officer at the school trying to decide whether or not there's a finding. You all know, if you have legal backgrounds, that if there's a charge in a criminal case, then the consequences are very scary. They are jail, incarceration, and registering as a sex offender. For the school, the consequences are a suspension or an expulsion from school, but also that part of your kid, your son, your brother, your uncle's record and their file will show that they've been found responsible or having a finding for a sexual misconduct. I'm going to stop for a second. I'll just encourage everybody that's on this webinar right now to understand how important it is to start having conversations with your children, with your teenagers, with your middle schoolers, with your nephews, with your nieces, with everybody that's in a school environment, because this journey is a journey that you don't want to go on. It's a journey that is devastating for everybody that's involved. The reason why I wrote the book and the reason why I'm always willing to do one of these webinars is that I've sat in that room where the parents have come to me. And those of you that are mothers and you have sons, everybody knows that that is a particularly special relationship. I call it the mama bear. I have a son, and my wife and my son's relationship is different than my relationship with my daughter. When your son is accused of any type of sexual misconduct, any type of words or conduct at school, or any behavior that creates a investigation is one of the most devastating things that a parent can go through. Our kids don't know how painful it is for us to see them in pain because they don't have kids yet. I always tell my kids, one day you're going to have children and you're going to understand how much you love your children and how challenging it is to go through something when your kids are going through something. So that's one of the main motivating factors. This uncomfortable conversation that you have to talk to your children, both your sons and your daughters, about the new environment of the high schools, middle schools. There are co-ed bathrooms, something that never existed when I was growing up. The environment and the ability to be in the same place with co-eds, the opportunities of social media. I've had cases where I've had young men investigated by Title IX at a high school for photographs that are being circulated in social media or words that are being communicated through social media about having an interest in someone. And if John says to Susan in a text message, I really like Mary, she's sexy, she's got a nice ass. And Mary finds out about that text and it makes her uncomfortable. She says, I don't want to be around John anymore. And I have 4 classes with John. Well, if John is your son and he gets an email from the school, and you get an email from the school from the Title IX director saying your son is engaging in conduct, words, behavior that require us to investigate whether or not this is going to be an ongoing thing. How many times has he done it? We need to see his text messages. We are considering having to suspend him or expel him from school. Just incredible. That conversation that you have to have with your son means that you have to say, look, no discussion, whether it's verbal or whether it's through social media, about anybody's body, about any particular sexual interest, about anything that could make someone uncomfortable in their environment. Not to mention the photographs and the pictures and the chats. I think that there's a generation of young people who are far too comfortable with saying whatever they think they can say and what they will say in social media, even the conversations they have in school. I've had families come in where their son has been accused of looking at a particular person, a college case. There's a dormitory, and a young man has a girlfriend, and he spends time at that dormitory, but the girlfriend has a roommate. That roommate talks about the boyfriend coming over and looking at her and spending time staring at her and making her uncomfortable. That's reported to Title IX. That's an investigation. That's a situation where this kid who you've raised, you've worked with, you've been helping them get to school, oftentimes in a scholarship, be an academic scholarship or athletic scholarship. Can you imagine the pain and the worry and the concern that because of these words, because of someone else's being uncomfortable about what they're doing, and it makes for, I know, a very strict, almost zero tolerance environment where you have to tell your kids, look, no conversations about sex, no looking, no placing yourself in environments that it could be uncomfortable, that you can make somebody else uncomfortable. They don't know about that. They don't understand that, but that's the conversation you have to have. You have to be on the side of caution and an abundance of it so that you don't find yourself or your kids in these particular areas. And it's not just kids, it's adults as well. I've had coaches and teachers and faculty members be investigated because of conversations, of text messages, of a party, a Christmas party, their behavior, things that have taken place. So this is my opportunity to let all of you know where these dangerous environments are and encourage you to help talk to your family members, to your friends, to your associates, to anybody you know that's a student, particularly as we're starting this new semester and we're going into the new year, for your own kids, even in middle school and high school because of the Title IX investigations. And I'm going to stop and take questions from any one of you about the criminal investigations in that process that takes place and anything else you want to know about Title IX. So I'm going to stop now and take any questions. You can take your mic off, or you can unmute yourself, or you can put it in the chat, however you want to conduct it, Tamara.
If you have questions, if you're okay with popping off mic, then that's fine. Or you can put your ones in the chat. If you feel more comfortable with that, I can call up those questions. Don't be shy. You got.
Oh, I'm this is Kim Range. I do have a question about I in your presentation it was definitely, and if you're looking at percentage wise, maybe I'm thinking the males get hit more with accusations and whatever. As much as we teach our sons, we have to teach our daughters the same thing, because a male may say the same thing as a girl. And we have to also be careful to make sure that we our girls the same thing in terms of what you say to the opposite sex, or even the same sex, that may be sexually motivated or whatever. And in this day and age, it's not just boys with women. You got to think, boys on boys, girls on girls, girls and boys, all that. Are there any kind of material for middle-aged school kids about this subject matter that is easy to approach and have those discussions?
Well, at the risk of trying to promote my book, it is a 57-page pamphlet that sort of walks you through what
Oh,
happens in a criminal investigation. And it talks about some of the things I've touched on regarding the type of crimes, the type of things that have to be proven, and the behavior and what to do if you're investigated. It's a place where you could have that middle schooler or teenager read the book and say, let's talk about it. Let's talk about some of these areas. Most importantly, when you're talking about the girls, it's a conversation I've had with my daughter. You can, as a young lady, be accused of harassing another young lady or a young man to the extent that they don't feel comfortable being a student at that school, and you can be the subject of an investigation. But I also talk to my daughter, and those of you who have daughters, you have to help them understand that the environment of in the dorms and the drinking and all those things, you have to be really, 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 really. I've seen as a prosecutor a lot of young women who've been taken advantage of because they are naive and they're trusting and they believe that this is going to be okay. And it turns out that it's not. And for those young ladies, when they go through that type of journey, it becomes very traumatic. It becomes incredibly painful for them. And now is the time to say, look, I don't want to take away your opportunity to enjoy your life or your high school life. But you have to be very careful about letting people know what makes you uncomfortable. One of the biggest problems and the biggest gap that exists when I've managed these cases from either side is that somebody's always going to say, well, they never said anything to me. They didn't say that they were uncomfortable. They didn't say that this was something that they didn't want to go through. And for women, those of you that are mothers and have daughters or aunts, and let them know that they have the power. They have to say, I don't want this. This is not what I want to do. I can have a drink and not be subject to that being a reason why it's okay for you to invade my space. They have to be strong. They have to make sure when they're out there with friends that are reliable, people that are going to make sure that they are going to get home safely, that there's no opportunity for them to be taken advantage of, and to make sure that they're real clear about that. If they're on campus and someone's trying to flirt with them or text them, they have to let them know, no, I'm not interested in you. I don't want you to text me anymore. I don't want you to say these things. Don't send me any pictures. I'm not sending you any pictures of myself, because a lot of times the person that's accused will respond and defend themselves saying, well, they never said they were uncomfortable. I thought they liked it. I thought they were okay. And for you young ladies who have lived a life where you've had people trying to hit on you and talk to you and you've tried to be strong and just kind of walk away, you have to now be able to say, I've told them over and over. Here's a text message of me saying, I didn't want this. I don't want these conversations. Stop saying these things about me. That way, the person who's doing that is placed on notice and they won't have the defense of saying, I didn't know, I didn't understand. That's really important. Those are the conversations that you have to have with your daughters.
To a quick question from the comment, if you can just sort of lay it out, who has the burden of proof and what do they need to prove?
For the criminal cases, it's the base. The process got to prove that the act took place and there was some intent involved, whether it's reckless or not. The where we're talking about alcohol, oftentimes the person that's accused, oftentimes the has also had alcohol as well. And here's the part that's really scary. Even though that young man has also been drinking, they are required to know whether or not the young lady is capable of giving consent, whether or not the person is incapacitated, which is different than being intoxicated. You can have drunken intimacy, but if someone is unable to say or do, it is becoming a problem. And it's really, really because who knows of any 22 or 23 or 18 or 17-year-old young man who understands that distinction, like this person is so clearly intoxicated. Now, if the person is unconscious, then that should be pretty clear. But oftentimes it is a partner that they're with, and they're thinking that this is just something that they're both doing because they're intoxicated. But the young lady wakes up the next morning and says, I don't remember anything. I didn't consent to this. And that's when the phone call comes. So that's when the officer shows up. And that's when the whole nightmare starts. Like, oh my God, I did not know that this was unlawful. This is what I thought was okay. Unfortunately, it's happened throughout the campuses and across the country. Going to happen tonight. Somebody's going to go to a party. They're going to be drinking. It's the first week of school. Somebody's going to have drunken sex with somebody they don't know. And who wakes up feeling like they've been taken advantage of, who wakes up not remembering what took place, could unfortunately result in a criminal investigation or even a Title IX investigation. And that's why we've got to make sure our kids are placed on notice. We've got to get this information out, and we've got to have these uncomfortable but honest conversations about knowing the danger in particular environments and knowing how to make good decisions before you even find yourself in that environment.
There looks like there's some clarity that you earlier on the differences in ages and things like that. The question is, if an 18-year-old engages in consensual sex with someone age 17, is that considered statutory rape?
It can be. Typically, the law in most states won't do anything unless there's a 2-year gap. So an 18-year-old is an adult. A 17-year-old is close to being an adult, but it's still a minor. Having consensual sex with a minor and you're an adult is statutory rape, but rarely ever prosecuted. You take the number down to 16, 15, 14, yeah, those cases are reported. They're mostly reported by the young lady's parents saying that this 18-year-old man is having sex with my daughter, and it's not force, it's not fear, it's not incapacitation, but he's taking advantage of her. This is a vulnerable person and it shouldn't happen. So yes, in the state of California, it actually, the way it's written in the penal code section, any young lady or young man under the age of 18 having sex with someone is considered statutory rape, even if that person is 18 years or younger, which is weird. It's never prosecuted. But definitely, if you're 18 years old. And here's another area for our young men. If they're on campus and they're 18 or 19, 20 at a college campus, there are a lot of young ladies from high school who come to the college campuses and they are part of the parties and they come to the dorms. And if you're having sex, even if it's consensual with the high schoolers, then that's a misdemeanor. You can be prosecuted, and it has happened.
This is Kimberly again. I do have a follow-up to that question, which was a great question. Um, when you're talking about our college kids and they're in different states. So you mentioned and I don't expect you to know, all the states' laws and, around that. But for California, you said it's statutory rape, but is that consistent across the country? Or, because you could have a son or a daughter that's in another state and it may not be. I don't know.
It's pretty consistent across the United States
Got it.
for minors, and the same for Title IX policies. I'll say for schools that aren't federally funded, if you're a private school like Stanford or USC, they may not have a Title IX department, but they'll have a student conduct department. And the same type of policies are mirrored in their investigations as well. So if you're at SC and you're at a party, or you're texting, or you're harassing someone, by their definition, you're doing anything that's sexual by words or conduct that makes someone's opportunity to have a healthy environment unhealthy. If you're disturbing their peace, that's a Title IX violation, and that can get you suspended and oftentimes expelled from school.
Can you talk a little bit about the like messages and picture sendings and things, when we're talking about making people feel uncomfortable, like can you say a little bit more about that? So like, because I think one of this topic, that's one of the things I feel like is an easy way for young people to get caught up because they're, everybody's flirting, they're sending text messages, but can you say a little bit more about like, crossing the line and in the context of message sending?
Yeah, I'll say something now, and the words are bad, but I think we're all adult here. I've had situations where people have had an investigation take place, and messages are going back about how much this teacher wants to fuck me, and how I know Susie wants to fuck me, and I'm going to fuck everybody on the badminton team, and I'm going to do all these things. When that information gets out, this person thinks that maybe they're just boasting or they're talking about it. That's making somebody uncomfortable, particularly if that person is named. Uh, that person that I saw yesterday has a really nice ass. You would think that was something that's unfortunately just part of a conversation that young adults are having. It's a lot of group chat. There's a lot of, folks who are out for the first time and they're in college and they're experiencing all of this freedom, and they're talking about it because they have these social media, they have these group chats, they have these forums. But when someone feels uncomfortable about it and someone feels like this is being too much and I don't want to hear this guy or this woman is just saying too much, that becomes an investigation. That's when, unfortunately, you get that email saying that we have 4 allegations that you are engaging in conduct that is disturbing the peace of another student. And this conduct is identified in our Title IX policy, and they'll list the policy in the section. And we're going to interview you. We want to talk to you about this, and we're going to interview everybody else. And if you have any witnesses that say otherwise, we want to interview those folks, and we're going to do it all on Zoom. And if you're lucky, you get to stay on campus while the investigation is taking place. But oftentimes they'll say you have to leave campus until we complete our investigation. An investigation that oftentimes takes 3, 4, 5 months. So you might be off campus for a whole semester before you can get back on. Not because you physically did anything, and not because you even really said anything, but these text messages are being circulated, and someone's reporting that what you're saying and what you're texting and pictures of yourself, all of which are making that person who has a right to go to school and not be subject to being made uncomfortable, has created and started this investigation.
Right, there's one other question. Can you talk about the stalking aspect of Title IX, how things may have changed with how prevalent social media is?
Yeah, there are a number of cases where there's an interest and there's a phone call, a text message, there's a person showing up at the cafeteria where you eat every day. And over a period of time, that becomes uncomfortable, it becomes offensive. And without having to confront that person or tell that person, the person that's receiving all of these text messages and these phone calls. The stalking oftentimes becomes real clear when or if the person that is being targeted says, stop, don't do this anymore, or blocks that person. When that person finds another way of contacting that person, they get a dummy phone or they go through something else, or they become part of your Instagram by changing their name and asking for you to invite them, or the same thing with Facebook. There's some pretty creative ways. Once that stage happens, then yeah, if that person reports it and it's investigated, it's a big red flag, and the Title IX investigators and coordinators and units are going to do whatever they can to remove that person from the school. And once again, no physical conduct, but showing up, texting, finding ways to get on your Instagram, finding ways to get on your Facebook. I don't know all the other different forms, but that happens, then that person's going to be removed. They're going to be expelled from school.
I see a hand raised in the chat, Lechala.
Yes, I'm Darryll. Hi.
Highly challenged.
And I both went to UC Davis, but I graduated the year that he was coming in. But we've had this conversation before a couple of years ago when we were in Sacramento. And even you talk about Title IX, but I have found in a way, even though it might not be as good, that you're sometimes better with a criminal prosecution than a Title IX because of the rights that you have. And I think I spoke to you about a case I had at San Diego State because you don't have a right to the attorney coming into the hearing. You don't have right to evidence. I couldn't get the sexual assault kit. I couldn't get the lady's level of intoxication. I couldn't get anything, but I knew it had it. She called the police. Then they never would have prosecuted this case. So, can you please talk about the different levels of proof? But we did talk about it, I think it was in 2023 when we were in, was it 2024? Right, in Sacramento.
Yeah, that's the irony of the whole area of sexual assault, sexual misconduct, words and conduct. For criminal cases, you get all of the discovery, you get all of the information. A criminal defense attorney gets to challenge the evidence, cross-examine the person. You get to put your own investigator involved. In Title IX, the most I can do as an advisor is try to advise my client as to what questions to submit to the hearing officer, because oftentimes I don't even get a chance to cross-examine the person who's making the accusation. And yet again, the burden of proof is much smaller than beyond a reasonable doubt. It's more likely than not. And the people who are part of the Title IX department oftentimes aren't experienced lawyers, they aren't experienced investigators. A lot of them are laypersons who've sort of been trained to ask these questions, but oftentimes they're not really equipped to make the decisions that many of them are making about whether or not someone should be removed from school, whether or not this conduct is at the level of making someone else so uncomfortable. There are a lot of folks that are fortunately triggered and they're more sensitive. And that makes it really difficult sometimes for anybody to be in their environment without them feeling offended. But if you are the person that's accused and you're just doing what you think a regular student would be doing, you get a Title IX investigation and it's problematic because you don't have all the resources. You don't have the ability to have an attorney to be really engaged. It's mostly the process and procedures that are outlined in the Title IX investigation, which is the reason why I want to have these conversations, because if you've already gotten the email about being investigated, then there's a long, hard road ahead in order to prevail. The best thing that we can do is be proactive and do what we can to get this information out. I've always said that there should be an orientation every school just for an hour, what we're doing right now. Hey, look, no more text messages, no more photos, no more saying anything derogatory. Don't mention any sex parts. Don't mention any body parts. Don't talk about what you can do or what you've done before. You talk about school, you talk about, your your goals and inspires you, but leave all that other information out, because if you don't, you may offend someone and not even know it. And then you're on this road where you don't have the ability to really challenge it. You don't really have the ability to fight. You get some, but yes, you're right, LaChala. Criminal cases are easier to fight than the Title IX, because Title IX hamstrings a lot of what we can do.
Right. Only that I just want to add, because the case I had, the investigator was also the one who's able to question, lack of better terms, defendant, but the attorney's not allowed to be part of it. But I want to know, what are the demographics? Do you find that there's more Black males, because that's who I'm concerned about, who are being investigated than any other group, or do you find that it's the same?
Across the board, more young men of color.
Okay.
Just it mirrors what happens in society, and in our criminal law society is unfortunately a unconscious bias that takes place when someone says someone's annoying them, and that person looks like us, African American. There's a heightened sense of concern that doesn't exist when you're oftentimes investigating people who are not of color.
So it's not really concern. That's who they go after. I mean,
Well, yeah, that's why in this webinar, because we got
okay.
to get this word out. We got to get this information out. I don't want a family coming over to my office almost in tears about how all this work they put into helping their son get through school and get here, and he's about to be expelled. And I talked to Tamara about this earlier, the psychological effects on a 19-year-old kid who's being told that their behavior is going to result in them having to leave school. Like, who does he talk to about that? What does he do with his peer group? How does he manage that new type of um, accusation? Am I this person that they say I am? Am I a harasser? Am I a stalker? Am I a person that's a rapist, a sexual assault person? All of those things are very, very traumatic for a kid and for that family, which is why we just have to do a better job of letting them know that there are now areas you can't go in, things that you shouldn't talk about, and be very careful about the people you surround yourself with.
So I don't know if you're going to move into another section, because I mean there are all kinds of questions that I can ask.
Sure.
So you have, we've got a lot of kids that are starting college now, and you mentioned that earlier, brand new environment, lots of new freedoms and things. And so, I mean, when these things come up, how do we navigate this? Now you're here. Someone has made an accusation. Like how do you recommend, how do we prepare them to sort of navigate this space, apart from saying, like, don't ever text anybody ever. If you're interested, so what? Don't ever say it out loud. That those extreme, and in some instances probably necessary, but what when it happens, how do we help our children navigate those situations?
When it happens, and when you get the phone call or that email, or you get an officer showing up at your dormitory or at your home, you go and you get an experienced attorney to help with the next process. In my book, I say things like, you don't give a statement, you don't allow yourself to be interviewed, you don't take a phone call from the person who's making the accusation, because oftentimes that's a pretext phone call. That person's going to call and say, why did you do this? I can't believe that happened. And oftentimes the first reaction for a lot of young men and older men is to say, hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry that this happened. And they're not necessarily saying, I did it and I'm responsible. They're just saying, I'm sorry, so that you stop scaring me and thinking that something's going to happen. But when it is recorded, then it's perceived by law enforcement and prosecutors that, oh, this person is admitting. We don't even have to worry about ID now, because they've already said. But what most people don't know about pretext phone calls, most kids don't know, most families don't know, even lawyers don't know. A lot of times I've had families say, well, let's go to the police department and tell them what happened. Let's tell them our side. you don't have a side because you don't know what they know. Oftentimes, the police department will interview witnesses, they will get DNA, they will get forensics, they will go through and get all of your social media, they will pose as somebody that's a friend and they will become a friend and they will start conversations with you. And then they'll come and interview you. And you've got all this information you want to tell them, but it's inconsistent with what they've already been investigating. So you look deceptive. You look like you're not telling the truth. And that's why I always say, even if you want to talk to the police, you don't, because you don't know what they know. You're at a disadvantage. You need a lawyer. You need somebody that's going to help navigate you through it. You need a lawyer to be proactive. What we do here at the Nieves Law Firm is that we have our own investigator. We investigate an accuser. We talk to the DA. We talk to law enforcement. We ask them where they are in their case. We do all those things up front so that that person can get some peace, that family can get some peace knowing that they've got an advocate. Rather not get to that point, but once you're there, then we've got to do all the things that are smart, all the things that are going to help you in the long run. My saying, I say all the time that once that happens, this is not a sprint. The wheels of justice turn slowly, and we're getting ready to take a journey, and everybody's got to be patient and also understanding that we're going to do everything we can. And I've had success. We've had some cases where we've been able to get a prosecutor to look at it differently, been able to get a Title IX investigation and realize that this isn't as offensive as you thought. But it takes being there in the beginning and mounting a really good, strong defense.
Ton has her hand raised.
Hey, Tom.
Hello, good evening.
Good
I
evening.
just want to say thank you so much for having this conversation. I am actually a mother of three sons
Mm.
who are in college, graduated. I have one that's about to graduate. But my point is, this is the conversation that I would have with them all the time. Like you say, it's uncomfortable, but not really. Because we need to have these conversations. And I would always tell them, when you go to college and you go to these parties, please don't drink. And if you do drink, don't hook up with a female and tell your friends. But as I'm listening to you, this is normal to have these type of conversations. I grew up in the probation field, juvenile, seeing this happening to a lot of our juveniles who end up in juvenile hall, and seeing other stuff as adults. But as you're speaking, it just made me think about, and I didn't even this know me until I'm listening to you speak. When I was in high school, this happened to a young man during senior sneak day. They went out. They was and one young lady stated that he did some inappropriate things or whatever, and he lost his football scholarship. And I remember it was a thing, but now that I am a mother of sons, now I'm thinking about, wow, what was his mom thinking, or how did they navigate through this? So it's just listening to you. I wish more would have this conversation. But I really applaud you for having this space to get this information, because it's very, very important, and just for the guys to hear it, but also for the girls to hear it. And also, when all of my have daughters, so when they have parties and I send my sons, I'm like, you're not drinking. You're going to make sure these young ladies, your cousins, are not taken advantage of and stuff. So it's just, yeah, but I just
Yeah,
wanted to say thank you so much.
you're very welcome. And you bring up the most important point as well. We have to have these conversations and we have to be really transparent. I tell my son, he's 28 years old now, but when he started college, no drunken sex. You don't have sex with anybody that's drunk. You don't have sex when you're drunk. You don't let your friends have sex with people. You don't have sex with people you don't know. The old sort of, idea of a one night stand being something that was exciting. It could be the worst thing that could ever happen to you in your life, because you don't know that person. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know how they're going to feel the next day. I've had so many horrible situations where men thought that they were, in fact, waking up the next morning and feeling like they, had something fun that happened, and then they get that phone call and it said, I'm with the campus police department and I'm investigating a sexual assault. Like, what are you talking about? What are you like? No, this person was uncomfortable. They told us that this wasn't what they wanted to do. And here's the big thing. A lot of men, and this is a deeper conversation that we'll have to have maybe at another time, but men, unfortunately, start off as boys and teenagers believing that there's some kind of conquest mentality. They believe that if they keep trying, if they keep talking, if you come to my dorm, that's a sign in their mind that this is something that you want to do. If you come into my room, if you take off your jacket, all of which does not mean that this is consent. But unfortunately, there's a caveman mentality that exists, and they keep thinking that as this goes further. And here's where it gets really scary. A woman can go through that process and never say the word no and never physically resist, but they're not wanting to do that. They call it they're submitting and feel bad about it because they never wanted to do it, but they didn't know how to communicate that. That oftentimes also gets prosecuted and charged. And this kid who doesn't understand that what you're doing and what you're trying to do is not healthy and it's not appropriate and it could be unlawful and it could be a Title IX case. We got to talk to our boys about that. That's not how you want to develop your intimate relationships with women. You want to develop a friendship. You want to have conversations with them. You want to enjoy all those things about being good partners and good friends before you go into this, crazy idea that you get from watching television or whatever sites are out there. And that's where I think a lot of the problem, especially for the juveniles who don't have a lot of male role models in their life who are telling them that, it's not cool to just hook up. It's not cool to have a lot of women. It's not healthy. You're not being a man. You're being less than a man if you're engaging in that type of behavior. If they can get that early on and understand how important it is to develop healthy relationships and be a healthy person, then that can go a long way in preventing these type of situations to take place.
Kimberly Range.
I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions. Well, one question is, how early do they teach this in schools, and do they teach it?
They don't teach it. Yeah, they don't. The teachers are afraid. I've asked schools across the Bay Area to let me come over and talk, and they won't let me come over because they're afraid to talk about it. Their philosophy is that if you don't bring it up, it won't happen. But it does happen. And when it happens, nobody knows what to do. So, yeah, if we're not doing it, the school's not doing it, and all they're going to do is be reactive. They're not going to be proactive. And that's a big problem as well. They won't say anything until it happens, and then they want to, kick you out of the school. One of the cases I mentioned earlier was high school, ninth grade, and there's co-ed bathrooms, and there's an accusation made in the co-ed bathroom. Rather than say, hey, we got to do something about these co-ed bathrooms, we should tell the kids that don't go into the same stall, wait until someone comes in and come out. Work on a way to prevent the environment of something happening in a bathroom with a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old. They didn't do any of that. And then it happens, and they want to kick the kid out of school. And I just think that's horrible. So we have to say, don't go to the co-ed bathroom, son. You go to your boys' bathroom. Don't even take the chance of somebody coming out of that co-ed bathroom and saying that you touched them or you looked at them or you tried to go into the same stall. If you go to just the boys' bathroom, you won't have a problem. And that's what we have to talk about.
Well,
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying thank you.
So we talk about this conversation a lot, and know that statistically it impacts males a lot more. But can we talk about it? How you're seeing this come up when the women are obvious cases are the obvious cases, but are there things that you've seen involving women that may not be as obvious, or that we should sort of be talking to our daughters about when it's when they're the accused?
The chats, the words, the conduct, the harassing, and the stalking. Women have not receive the stop calling me, stop showing up, stop saying those things, stop doing those things. They are investigated for harassment as well. And for their relationships, if they are looking at men or women and they become too aggressive and they cross the boundaries, or if they start touching when there's no consent, they are subject to the same type of investigation and the same type of violations, the same type of problems. If you go up into the coaches and teachers, there are female coaches and teachers who have been investigated for inappropriate behavior with students, young athletes, young men. Those are problems as well. You have to be mindful of that. Their text messages, those social relationships that at one point used to exist can't exist anymore. If you're a female teacher or a coach at a university, there's no taking the kid home. There's no going to buy them clothes. There's no doing anything that's social with them because you're putting yourself in a position where you can be investigated for doing things that are inappropriate. You have to keep the teacher student relationship, teacher student, coach student, employees, when you're the employer, when you're the manager of a firm, when you are working in your own environments, the same thing applies. We are no longer able to have these environments where you get to say anything you want to or do anything you want to. Those days are gone. It's just too much at risk in all of those environments, and that goes for both men and women.
I saw another hand.
Oh, Tamara, that was me, but I was trying not to talk too much. But what you're talking about, we always have what's called the talk about our son's interaction with police, know your rights. And I think this is just another bullet point when we do something in the community. Know your rights, not only interaction with the police, but also in school and college and stuff. It may not solve it, but it's at least trying to make a difference. All right, I'm out.
Yeah, very true.
And so we're coming up to the 7:30 hour, but I just wanted to say, can you briefly sort of give us some bullet points, if we want to teach our children to be very clear about how they're setting those boundaries, or, if they want to make sure they're preparing themselves not to be on the wrong side of things, like some, some takeaways for the parents or the students, even how to best prepare themselves, apart from don't text people and those, how do we give them the boundaries?
Yeah, you start off with the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated. You've gotten here because of all your hard work. You've done everything you're supposed to do. Don't get caught up and swept up in all of the gossip. Don't spend time talking about people's appearance. Don't shame people. Don't talk about this. Don't share your personal interests that you have with someone else with other people. You are who you are. You're strong, you're independent. And you find a peer group also healthy and thinking about the same thing. You don't want to be that group of people that's always drinking, that's always gossiping, that's always on somebody's chat line, that's always doing something that's outside of who you are. Be true to yourself and stick to that, and be mindful because of what we're sharing tonight, and the consequences exist and how things can be misinterpreted. Just be very private. Keep your thoughts to yourself. If there are thoughts about any type of conduct or any type of interest, keep your chats to yourself. You talk about school, you talk about politics, you talk about sports, you do those things. But for the personal information and for the relationships you develop, just be very mindful that you treat people the way you want to be treated.
Well, I want to say thank you. Are there any, it looks like, okay, so I want to say thank you to everybody who joined us tonight for this very timely discussion. We are really looking to make sure that we're thinking about this initiative that we have. This Cable Connects initiative is intentionally our effort to educate our communities on topics that are relevant to you as a part of the community. We educate our attorneys all the time. We do MCLEs all the time, but this is a real boots on the ground effort to make sure that our community is empowered and our community is informed. And that is how we make sure that we're stronger and we are that we are equipped. And so I want to say thank you to Attorney Stallworth for his time, his intentionality, and really sharing, such a wealth of knowledge. And I want to thank you to the audience for actively participating, raising those hard questions, having this hard conversation. Some of it seems like very common sense, but some of them are things that you had to, kind of like, oh, you know what, I need to really consider those things. This is really important. We're in a very interesting time right now. So I just want to say thank you for your time this evening, and I hope you'll stay tuned. Um, on September 11th, the flyers in the chat for the upcoming Cable Connects events. It'll be the part 2 to our educational, our back to school series, where we're helping you to advocate for your educational rights. So thank you. Thank you, Attorney Stallworth. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Don't forget to like and share this video, and for more legal insights, keep watching and subscribe to our channel.